You're my first guest on this show, by the way. I'm launching as part of Step Anywhere. Basically, yeah, I'm calling it Maté Conversation. I don't know. Do you know what Maté is? Have you heard about it before?
No.
So this is Maté. It's an Argentinian South American drink that's known a little bit in some parts of Lebanon, I think Jordan, Syria as well. So I used to love coffee before, but it gives me like really bad acidity. So I had to switch to something that's like better for the stomach. So I've been drinking this for a long time. What do you drink in the morning? Do you have coffee, or what kind of coffee?
So this is my remnants.
Okay, nice.
The Venti Americano, and I still have a bit that's still chilled. But yeah, that's my morning.
Nice. How many of those do you have per day? It's not morning anymore. So.
No, just one of those, and then I replace it with my green tea for the rest of the day. So only one of those.
Yeah, that's a good way to go. So this is Mumzworld is like your second like successful big startup that you've done. You were a co-founder of Bait before, right?
I was, yes.
So Rabia is your brother, right?
He is.
Oh wow! So you guys are a family of entrepreneurs. How many are you in the family?
We're 5, and yes, all 5 are entrepreneurs in some shape or form.
Oh my God! Wow, amazing.
Blood, I think.
Do you guys even do you see each other, or you're always busy all the time?
We actually see each other every day. We have dinners as a family at least 3 times a week. We're 5 siblings. All of us live in close quarters. My sister lives next door. Rabia lives a block away. So we're very close. So we see each other a lot.
Yeah.
We see each other a lot. So we all we're like a big gang.
You are a big startup as well, gang, doing a lot of different successful startups ever. Yeah, I think family is great, and I think COVID, one of the things that it helped is that it allowed us all to kind of like have more time to do that stuff. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. Nice. So, and how do you manage all this? I mean, are you like you've been basically running Bait, now Mumzworld, big operation with family. How do you do that?
So look, it's not, I think the entrepreneurial world and the startup world is not for everyone. It is certainly a juggle, a daily juggle, balancing priorities for your employees, your shareholders, your family, your children is never ever easy, and it's a daily balance of priorities, really. And again, it's not for everyone. I think with Bait, it was perhaps easier because there was a bigger team that was involved in the initial days of Bait. It's a service business, so a service business is always a lot less complex than an e-commerce business. So the Bait journey was, I think, a funner journey, if you want to use the word. Mumzworld is certainly filled with complexity, and we entered it when the ecosystem was much, much younger than with Bait. So
that's a good point. Yeah, and you have a massive operation. I mean, with e-commerce, you take care of warehouses, of inventory, of logistics. So it's not just really the tech and the service that you're providing. Can you tell us a little bit about more? I mean, one of the things that I think a lot of the people listening to us today would like to learn from you, probably on the details of your operation and how you're running it today. You told me before when we spoke that there's tons of challenges. Some are in payments, which are better now than before, but in customer service and infrastructure. So, if you can tell me a little bit, like how has this improved from when you first started? How did you face these issues, and how did you get to what it is today with operations specifically?
Sure. So, and I've said this before, so anyone who's kind of listened to me talk has heard this time and again. E-commerce doesn't operate in a vacuum. E-commerce, for it to be successful, has to be part of an ecosystem that actually has enablers that will allow for success. So These enablers include last mile providers that are reliable and fast, include payment gateways that work, supply chain that's sophisticated, technology talent, because at the end of the day, e-commerce is driven by technology. We are a technology company first and foremost. So all of these have to be readily available in the ecosystem in order for you as an e-commerce player to tap into and to solve customer pain points. If they don't exist, then you have to create them yourself. And in order for you to create them yourself, it takes time and it takes a lot of money. It's not always possible. So for us, when we launched Mumzworld at the end of 2011, we were the first vertical e-commerce play for mother, baby, and child in the Arab world. Last mile providers were very few, and most of them, if not all of them at the time, were not used to the demands of e-commerce, which is speed, complexity, reliability, and bulk, and demand. So most of the last mile providers at the time were used to a slow movement of product and not bulky. So that's something that we had to overcome. Similarly, payment gateways, when we launched, there was one payment gateway. Now there are many more. Technology talent was not readily available, especially in the type of technology that we wanted to build. And so, again, to build it, it was very cash intensive. We are, venture funded. Capital comes with track records. So again, as you build, you raise capital, then you build some more, then you raise capital, etc. The long and short of it is where we are today. We have built our own operational enablers, particularly in markets like the UAE, which was our first market. And this is why the UAE market is I would say, more advanced in operational or customer centricity than perhaps other markets. Saudi, we are now building and replicating what we have done in the UAE. In other markets like Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, again, we're following suit.
What are the things that, so you said that some things you've built inside internally and some things, you work with partners on. Can you split those? What are the things that you've built internally and what are the things, and how did you decide just to build something internally? Yeah.
So now, for example, in the UAE, we have our Yalla service. So our Yalla service is our delivery service that delivers anywhere from 4 to 12 hours. If you order something now, you will get it in 4 to 12 hours, which is great for an e-commerce player. So if I want a stroller sent to me by tonight at 9 p.m., if I order a Yalla product, it's going to be delivered to me. And the reason it's going to be delivered to you is because we have built our own last mile driver or courier system that will allow us to deliver that type of speedy service to you. If we were dependent on the couriers of the world, we would not be able to achieve that. So that's an example of where we have in the UAE mobilized our own last mile to allow us to deliver to our customers much, much faster than if we were dependent on others. Similarly, and we're doing the same now in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is our largest market, and we're replicating that success in Saudi. Now it's a bigger market, so the complexity is greater. The other thing is supply chain. Today, we have 250,000 products across 4,600 brands. These are brands that we source locally, regionally, and internationally. In the past, we used to be very dependent on local suppliers for supply chain, and we were, ridden with out of stocks. Now we are less reliant on that because now we have outreach into global suppliers. We have warehouses here in the UAE. We have warehouses in Saudi where we keep our own stock of exclusively supplied or sourced products, which allows us, again, better dependence on stocks and exclusive ranges that others don't carry. Yeah. So these are just a couple of examples of where we are better be able to cater to our customer.
So from payment, last mile, customer service. So from these, are all these, other than the last mile you mentioned, are all of the others you work with partners on?
So we work with partners across the board. Like I said, e-commerce doesn't operate in a vacuum.
Yeah.
But we have, again, of our 4,600 brands, many of them we source internationally as opposed to sourcing from the local kind of supply chain. We have exclusive arrangements that we have, again, locked in from global suppliers as opposed to necessarily from local suppliers, which allows us, again, to cater to the huge demand of customers locally and not be at the mercy of out of stocks, which is what we faced in the past.
Yeah, and for customer service, I think we spoke about that being a bit of an issue with is that something you do internally, or you work with an external, or a mix of the two? I just want to get to understand, like, how do you decide on what to work with partners on? How many partners have you switched as well? I know, like, a lot of, e-commerce players say we tried all of them, and then we're back to the same ones again. So maybe some of that, if you be good to know, what have you guys experienced within that?
So look, the way I would answer that is very simple, and that is, at the end of the day, Mumzworld is a customer-focused organization. We built this business to empower moms to make the most informed decisions for their children and really build a platform that will make a mother's life easier by giving her access to the widest choice at the best prices, transparency, and a community that's unparalleled community to engage and to share. In order to do that, we have to be very fluid as an organization and constantly edit and adapt our processes and systems to allow us to achieve that objective. Customer service is the front line. It's your soldiers who are answering the questions, solving problems, catering to these challenges. Now, in the time of COVID, to be very fair, everything fell apart, in the sense that, the time of COVID, none of us were able to move, including your customer care team, who were suddenly working from home, especially for the initial period. And the problems during the time of COVID were very different. You had lockdowns of roads. You had entire areas completely blocked from mobility. And so we had to literally daily look at what's happening in the ecosystem and adapt as an e-commerce player. And a lot of things were out of our control. We could not control road blockages. We could not control supplies being blocked from coming into the country. All of that was out of our control. So what happens then? You depend on your frontliners, the customer care soldiers, who normally would get, say, 100 questions, suddenly having 5,000 questions.
And you have your customers are also very, like, probably difficult type of, like, customer, because they're all moms, they're stressed out, and it's their right to be stressed out. They have kids. It feels a big responsibility, in one way or the other for on your side.
Yeah. I mean, look, you have more questions coming in. Some others saying, how can I get my product? How fast will it be? The roads are blocked. When am I going to get my diapers? So suddenly you have a higher frequency of questions, and you don't have that many people to cater to that. Second of all, you have questions that, frankly, because things are changing, you may not have the answers to. So if Abu Dhabi to Dubai is closed today, and the customer asks, when will I get my product into Abu Dhabi, you actually don't know. And so this is what happened during the time of COVID. It was certainly challenging for the e-commerce players like us. And we were trying our best. I mean, we certainly mobilized more people. All hands were on deck to try and creatively find solutions to the customers' problems. Now, having said all of that, we've come over that hill. We've learned a lot of lessons. Customer care are critical for the organization. We will continue to adapt and improve our processes to cater to this fluid environment. But it's not easy. And again, this comes back to the complexity of e-commerce. E-commerce is complex. It's complex because it's constantly changing, and there are many touch points that can go wrong, and you have to be on top of these touch points day in and day out.
So when you mobilized, like, during COVID, when you had 5,000 questions coming in, you had to mobilize different. Was that internal resources, or you had to get in more external partners and support and customer service? So how did you manage, to answer such a jump and the number of questions with all the challenges that you have?
So again, without, or rather sharing what's needed, we always work with outside and internal partners. We are too big of an organization, and we're growing too fast to be self-reliant only on internal. So the company is growing too fast, so we do work with outside partners as well as internal partners. This is how we scale up and shrink down whenever we need to.
And was it difficult getting more support because everyone needs that support during COVID? Everyone was overloaded, I imagine.
It was very difficult. So we needed more pickers and packers because our volumes went through the roofs. We didn't have enough staff in the warehouse picking and packing. We just couldn't find the manpower. Demand. Products were out of stock. So we had to be creative in how we had to source. Drivers, we needed more drivers. We had to be creative in how we mobilize more. So definitely when you're dealing with huge volumes overnight, becoming even bigger, you have to be creative in problem solving.
Someone from the audience asking about, using bots or some kind of automation for customers. So actually, in general, it'd be good to get your thoughts on that and how you guys have used different automations, and if actually helps, or you feel that everything still needs to be, a lot of it manually done.
So chatbots have their place, certainly for your repeated questions. So whether it's where's my order or I need to return. So the common Q&As, chatbots become very useful. Now, what we have found is, particularly our customer really does want that personal attention, and she wants to feel that she's talking to a person, even if it's a simple question like, where's my order? She wants a human being to actually tell her that. So there's still that element of connection that the human touch for the mother in particular is very valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone knows Eva from Emirates MBD, trying to get to the human. It can be tricky. Yeah, it can be tricky in different times. To go more over to the last mile component, and we had a player in the region, Fetcher, which was a last mile startup, and it's filling a big gap because we spoke about how there's a big infrastructure gap in the region, which takes time to build. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's different players that build it. But what are some areas in last mile or others that other new startups could come and specialize in and focus? Or to put my question another way, what would be a startup that would come up now and solve a very critical issue in your business that you feel needs to be solved? Just like payments, how many startups came about, and now you have a lot of payment providers. We have a lot of them participating with us in the conference and sponsoring. What about the other issues?
So look, I believe the region is ripe with opportunity right now. There are certainly many pain points, not only from the customer, but also from service providers like us who are also customers. And the pain points really stretch across many, many touch points. Last mile is definitely a challenge. Unless you have the financial capacity and the infrastructure to build your own, which very few people have that. Last mile is prohibitive today. It's costly to ship cross-border. It's costly to ship in your local area, and it's not reliable. So certainly a gold standard, reliable player that can come on board and say, I can do this better, faster, and in an affordable way, there's certainly a place for that. Again, all the touch points, supply, demand. Right now, there are thousands of brands in our particular category that are looking to come to the region. We have become that kind of go-to destination for a lot of the global brands who want to reach the local mother. So enablers in that kind of communication are also needed in the market. Content for this community is also lacking. So we're creating our own content through our blog for mothers to empower her to make decisions. But our Arabic content is very far and in between. So there isn't enough Arabic content out there. And that's certainly a need that is important to solve.
How challenging is it in your business that a lot of, I would guess, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of your customers are with you for a period of time, and then when they're out of, motherhood like phase, or their kids are older, you lose them as customers, or lose big part of their purchases that they're making on a regular basis. You've invested so much in acquiring these customers and building the trust with them. How does that affect your business when it's such a, the lifetime of a customer is short?
So we are actually one of the most well-positioned businesses and fortunate business in that we have the longest lifetime value. Especially with Mumzworld, because we cater to the mother in her pregnancy, usually third trimester of pregnancy, and she stays with us all the way till the child is preteen, till he or she is 12 years old, across different life stages. So the baby, the toddler, the preschool, the school, and then the 12 to 13-year-old. So our lifetime is very long. This is a customer who's super loyal. She's very viral, and she's your greatest ambassador. In this part of the world, the average mom has 2 to 3 children. So if she's happy with you with that first child, she's going to come back to you for the second and third child, and she's endorsing you not only to her friend, but to her entire neighborhood. And this is very different than someone buying, for example, a phone or an electronic or an outfit where it's a sporadic and an in and out purchase. We really do build loyalty. This is reflected in our lifetimes of our customers. It's reflected in our very strong cohorts. And this is why our business is an interesting one.
What's your growth tactics or strategy? Maybe at the beginning when you first started, let's say if you can tell us actually about your first 1,000 customers, or the initial customers when you're still a small team, and then you can maybe a little bit more about what you do now and how's that different in acquiring customers.
Sure. So look, I'm not going to talk to you about how we acquire customers, but I will talk to you about what our objectives are in that exercise. So again, Mumzworld is about creating a platform that's going to empower moms to make the most informed decisions for their children. We are a business that's driven by a DNA of impact. You empower a mother with the tools and resources, you then empower her child, you empower a child, you create positive impact. That's our driver. And so when we think of how we reach this mother, how we talk to this mother, that's in the back of our mind. And we think not, how do I want to go and grab a mother with a 50 dirham off or a 10% off or a steal deal. That's irrelevant to us. And in fact, in the first 5 years, we didn't discount any prices on Mumzworld. We were running at everyday low prices, and we didn't have to go up and down in prices. We only started, doing that when the market became much more rampant in these price wars. But what drives us in our acquisition and in our retention is, what do I need to do today to make a mother's life easier? What products does she need that she's missing? What service does she need that's going to make her life easier? And what can I do that's going to create an unfair advantage in the market? Today, we have the widest range in our vertical for mother, baby, and child. We carry everyday low prices, so we carry authentic product in their low prices. And we have a community of 2.5 million mothers who are constantly engaging. And this is all part of our acquisition strategy. So I think the long and short answer, Ray, that I would answer is, in building a business that has long-term sustainability, the way we look at it is, what do I need to do to build a business that has true, real customer value? Not
you focus on product, yeah.
A product and your narrative. What's your narrative? It's not your price discount that comes and goes. It's not your steal deal. It's what are you trying to do as a business that can solve a customer's problem? And this is what drives us.
I think that, I agree with that. Like, focusing on the customer and the product in large parts can allow you with time to build this loyalty and fill the gap that people really need. But then with a lot of, founders or companies, when you have giants, also competing with you on the same products, they're running massive budgets of ads, they're running different things that are going around and discounts trying to steal your customers. How do you maintain that? So you still need to, acquire that customer, right? So what you're saying with loyalty and with like having big trust with the brand and word of mouth also helps a lot. But your first customers, or even as you continue to acquire customers, what do you do? Not just you as as a startup founder or someone trying to grow their business, and especially when you're competing with a lot of big players, right? So with the likes of Amazon, it's got Prime. I mean, there are probably some products that we'll find on Mumzworld that I can't find somewhere else. And I think you answered that as being one of the main things that, having what moms are looking for. But what would you advise? I agree with you on the focus on the product, on the customer, but how do you balance between that and the pressure of the now that you need to acquire, X amount of customers to get X amount of revenue, to grow your business, to be profitable and so on, because that requires patience.
Sure. So, I mean, again, you have to say, what are your unfair advantages as a business? What makes you different, and why will the customer come to you? That's the first question you ask. Not how can I copy another player and do what he's doing, but do it cheaper, because that's short term. What do I need to do as a business that makes me different and that's relevant to the customer? So for us as Mumzworld, the first thing we knew we had to do is we say, when you've shopped on Mumzworld, you've shopped everywhere. What does that mean? That means a mother who wants to come and buy her basic, Chico or Graco or Peg Perego, or she wants to buy that exclusive niche find that she can't find anywhere. When she comes on Mumzworld, she's going to find that. So the first thing we had to do is build a very comprehensive catalog. That's the first thing. So that's how you acquire customers, by making sure that you have a range that's unparalleled. That's first. The second thing that we believed was an unfair advantage, and that's long-term sustainable for a business, is everyday low price. What we're telling the customer is, listen, I'm going to buy something at X, and the supplier tells me that I can sell it between X and Y. X being the lowest and Y being the highest. And I'm always going to promise you that I'm going to price it at X. If a competitor comes in and goes below cost, so i.e. prices it less than what he bought it, he's losing money, in other words, you know what? I will match that. I will price match that guarantee, no questions asked. So if a competitor decides to go lower, first of all, I'll match it, but then I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call the supplier and say, what's going on? And then and to kind of manage that. So everyday low price, customers know when they come to Mumzworld that they're going to get fair value for money day in, day out throughout the year. And that's very, very important, of authentic products, not wrong products, authentic product. The third thing is Mumzworld is where mothers are. We are the biggest community of mothers. We are in all the mother frequented institutions. We have partnerships, exclusive partnerships with most of them. So, we become kind of omnipresent in the community of mothers. That's also one of our unfair advantages. And we have many of these. So the long and short answer is to acquire a customer, you have to have a product or a service that's relevant. But more important than that, you have to have a product or service that's relevant and unique, and you have to own it authentically. And this is what Mumzworld has built over the years.
One of the people from the audience is asking, which is a good question for someone who's just starting up, and maybe you need to go back kind of like in the years to when you're just starting up. He's asking, how do you get suppliers on board when you're just starting up and you're still very small? So you spoke about how, having complete, all the products ready, but when you're just starting up or you're still small, you're a small player. So suppliers don't care about you, and this actually, is something that many startups face regardless of what business you're in. When you're nobody, when you first start and you have to prove yourself and get people to buy what you're saying.
That's a great question, actually. That's a great question. It's the chicken and egg story. You can't sell product before customers. You can't get customers before you have the product. So look, for us, when we launched, like I said, there wasn't a vertical pure play for mother, baby, and child. E-commerce was considered by a lot of, particularly our vertical, to be a fad. So it's coming, it's going, nobody believes in it. So when we were knocking on the doors of suppliers, many of them said, not interested. Brick and mortar is where customers, they have to touch and feel the product. Nobody believed it. So just to give you perspective, we went live on Mumzworld at end of October of 2011, and we had 15,000 products, 15,000 products. And you know how we got that? Not because the suppliers believed in e-commerce, they didn't. Not because they believed in us, they didn't even know us, but because they believed in our story. Because you have to go in there with your vision and you have to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a very low barrier to try it and to trust me. You know what? You're going to give me your catalog. I'm going to merchandise and market your catalog. And you need to give me 3 months to prove to you that I'm going to sell more than you've ever sold. And you come to an arrangement.
That's a good way, yeah.
So it really has to be your pitch. It has to be your narrative. And then you start. And then once they begin to see the traction, you get more business and then more, and then you strike the big brands. And the minute you start striking the big brands, that attracts other brands. Right now, Mumzworld uploads on average per week 3,000 SKUs every week on Mumzworld.
Wow.
And this is because brands are us because they see the traction.
And do you still think that there are a lot of gaps in the market missing in terms of like verticals? We've seen a lot of e-commerce startups in the region that are, owning certain verticals. Do you think there are more gaps? Do you think that's a good approach overall if someone wants is in e-commerce or want to start a company in e-commerce to choose a vertical and own it and try to own that vertical? Do you see that, from Mumzworld and from other startups that are around, like you can own a vertical and compete with the giants?
Sure. So look, the world is now moving to consolidation. I think that we're seeing a lot of copycats in the market, players saying, I can do that, better or faster, and they don't last very long. I think certainly there's room to identify need gaps from the customer or from the service providers and try to address them better. But we do have consolidation, especially with e-commerce. What does that mean? That means you're probably going to see consolidation of verticals coming together to cross-sell and upsell the same customer. At Mumzworld, we are today a gateway into the household. The mother is the decision maker into the household. She's the one who is making decisions for herself, for her children, for her husband. And so the opportunity there when you have trust and loyalty with the mother is tremendous. So do we as Mumzworld go and do other verticals ourselves, or do we talk to others who also want to enter the vertical space? So again, consolidation I think is key, especially given the horizontal giants like the Amazons of the world and the Noon of the world that have tremendous resources, tremendous infrastructure, and tremendous capacity to acquire customers. Yeah. You need to build giant infrastructures to compete. Coming in with like small pockets and small infrastructures is going to be difficult to compete.
And it's small margins as well. That's probably one of the challenges.
Yeah, depending on which vertical. Some verticals are higher than others. Electronics is small margins, but not others.
What is your vertical? Is it where does it fall on that scale?
So we are healthy. We are the more attractive space.
Are you profitable now, or
I'm not answering that.
All right.
Profitability is important for a business, 100%. A business that's not profitable is a business that is dependent on cash flow that's coming in constantly. There's a time and place for everything. So for those in the audience who are building a business, they're going to get, just as a side note, they're going to get a lot of pressure from investors if they go down the investment round, whether it's VC or PE, where you have some investors, especially PE, saying be profitable fast. And then you have the VCs who have a longer patience track where they say, no, you don't need profitability, you need scale. And the entrepreneur is going to get pressure from both constantly. What's very important for the entrepreneur to know is how big do I want to be? How big and how fast? If you want to be very big, very fast, you can't be profitable very fast. If you want to be very small very fast, you can be profitable very fast. So again, you need to weigh the balance. And by the way, you can be very small and profitable very fast, but you probably won't last for longer than a year or 2 years. So scale
that balance is tricky. Yeah, it's tricky to know when you need to push for profitability versus when you need to push for growth, and then you might have conflicting opinions as well on that from your investors or different people involved in stakeholders. We're going to switch to another topic. Someone in the audience also asking a question, which is more around financing, and I'd like to talk about that more. You've raised several rounds so far. So mainly the questions around valuations, and a lot of, we've raised money as well, and a lot of startup founders that I know have also, had their fair share of, that time when you're trying to set a price evaluation for your company, and then you go back and forth. And a lot of the VCs also I speak to, everyone kind of knows that there isn't really a formula to you can do models and Excel sheets and all of that, but at the end of the day, it's like how much you're willing to pay and how much you feel that business value. What has been your experience with that? As you grow, you can probably apply these models more and more, but when you're first starting up with your seed round, Series A, how do you set a price? And then which price, like how should founders think in terms of what price to accept and what's good for them?
Yeah. So it depends. This has a lot of dependencies. Obviously, there are many comparables regionally, locally, and globally that are the starting point. So the first thing we did is we said, okay, e-commerce, vertical space, globally, what kind of multiples does it ask for? That's the first question we ask. So if you go to the US or Europe or underdeveloped countries, what typically are the multiples that e-commerce players that are verticals like us, that have similar metrics to us, what can they ask for? So that's the starting point. And because that's what you go to the investors with. And you say, look at what's happening in the US, and we're very similar, so you should be valuing us similarly. Now, having said that, like you said, it really does depend on your pitch. It depends on your business. It depends on you as a founder, how well or how badly you can actually sell it. And it depends on how desperate you are. So in our A round, we were oversubscribed to our A round very quickly. We got several term sheets on our table, and for us, it was kind of a pick and choose. We didn't choose the highest valuation. We didn't choose the lowest. We chose in between because we like these investors, and that's what we stuck with. But guess what? Your first valuation kind of sets the tone for the future. So if you go for a lower valuation, you're kind of telling future investors that you kind of accept that. And if you go for too much of an inflated valuation, you might actually struggle later by having to go down, which is never. Yeah. So it's a balance. Now, look, for me, this is a sensitive topic. Do I think Mumzworld has always been given the highest valuation? I think, and as a founder, I'm obviously biased. I believe the value that Mumzworld has created across all its unit economics has been tremendous. We've gotten very strong valuations. Could we have gotten higher? Maybe yes. Were we on the top end of the spectrum? Certainly not. Were we on the bottom? We were not. We were kind of in the middle. But
how many rounds? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
We've done 5 rounds. So we've done our seed, our A. We did a women-only round, which was a strategic round, and we did 2 other rounds post that.
And what's the average time from start to finish?
So the seed round took us a week. The A round took us a month.
A week, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So the seed round, and again, that's a different conversation altogether, and we'll talk about that separately. So seed and A were super fast. The B round took us a very long time. The B round we weren't small anymore. We weren't big yet. We were kind of in the limbo land. And this is kind of where most businesses struggle. We didn't need a little money. We needed significant cash to start scaling much faster. And so with that, we had to talk to a lot of investors. We had to negotiate a lot of valuation debates. So that, I would say, the B round was our most difficult round by far. And then the next round took us about, I think, 6 months. And the round after was shortly thereafter. We're raising now. We're closing a round now, which we started recently. This is, I would say, our most important round. We're very, very, very excited about this round because we are in hyperscale mode, lots of exciting initiatives, and this is really something that's going to take our customer to the next level and us and the customer to the next level. So this is an exciting round, and it's the biggest.
Amazing.
today.
Yeah, good luck with that. What would you say? I know there isn't like a perfect, mix, but from your experience, having founded two, very successful startups, and had your share with, fundraising and dealing with investors and so on. What is an ideal kind of setup to have as a founder in terms of how many co-founders to have? And, probably, the wide opinion is that having opposite, skill sets. And then is it recommended to start with having VCs right away, or raising from friends and family, or friends and family and fools, what they say. And then, like the timing and what's ideal, and how many people to have. How do you give away board seats? When should you give away board seats? How do you think of that as a founder? If an investor that you really need, let's say coming in your, early days, and you really need the money, but on the long term, it doesn't justify to have them, take a big, let's say, board seat or vote in your business. How do you make these decisions? And if you've had some also to face some of these issues and how you dealt with that, would be very valuable.
Sure. So the first question is on, I hope I can remember all these, on the founder. Do you have a co-founder?
Yeah.
Who's a co-founder? So my personal view, with Bates, we were a handful. We were 5 people who started the business, and everybody came with an expertise area. So you had the tech genius, you had the operational mandate, you had the business development, marketing. So everybody came as an expert in their field, and really day one we all just started running. So we had our area of expertise, and we knew what we had to get done, and we did it, and it was so much fun. And you were surrounded by people who were experts at what they did. You were surrounded by people that you were learning from, and you were contributing what your area of expertise was while you were learning. So it was phenomenal, and enjoyed every moment of it. Fast forward to Mumzworld, we were 2. So 2 or 3 later on. So it was more difficult. And I say this all the time. Great businesses are built by great people. Great businesses are great. Businesses don't grow by themselves. They come from brains, from minds, from problem solving. So we started with 2, then we built to 3, and then we continued to build the team. And now we're 280. Our founders are still intact, and 100% Mumzworld would not be here today without the core team that started. And yes, we were 2-3 founders, but we also had a core team who started with us on day one, who are still with the company today, and the company would not be where it is today if it wasn't for these core personnel who are part of the business today. And they are, we consider them as the family, the Mum's family. So that's the first question. So yes, I would strongly urge to have a partner or several partners that complements you, that strengthens you, and gives you kind of the fallback on when you need it. And you
definitely, it's better to have, it's less lonely and better to have, people, especially when each one is focusing on a certain area. But comparing between, when you had, 2 or now 3 and 5, I mean, for you, it was a good experience, but obviously it was a big success story. But don't you think it's like too many in a general case, not specifically in Bait's case, to have like 5 people as co-founders, and then, you have to deal with each other and trust each other, and then, you're have different shares in the company, and when you raise investment, everyone is getting more and more diluted. So what is, just to look at it, separate from your own experience, but also with it, because you had a good experience with that. Would you say like having 2 people co-found a company, or, if you have more people that you can bring in and fill a gap, bring them in and don't worry about it?
So there has to be a clear delineation of responsibilities. At the end of the day, the CEO has his or her clear responsibility. The COO does, the CMO does, or whatever you want to call them. Everybody has to have very, very clearly defined roles. So you can't bring in 2 CEOs. I mean, that's doomed for failure. You can't bring in 2 operational heads. That's doomed for failure. You bring in people who either complement each other or not. So 100%, and there has to be a clear division of respect and trust. So at the end of the day, so for me as the CEO of the company, I have certain accountabilities and responsibilities, and I rely on other leadership to do certain things. But at the end of the day, there has to be a kind of a final call. And a final veto, if you like, and every person has their defined roles. And that has to be set on day one, 100%. Now, you also asked about kind of dilution and investors. It's incredible how getting the wrong investors on board early on can actually destroy the business, and getting the right investors early on can actually support and drive the business forward. It really is. And I look back now at the days very early on when there were certain investors that we were considering bringing on board, and we didn't. And we didn't because we felt that they were not aligned with our mission and our vision. And now looking back, it was not probably, but certainly one of the best decisions we made, because had we gone down that road, we wouldn't be here today. So
How do you decide on that, though? Is it like the person you're dealing with on the investor side? Is it the more long-term strategic fit? And sometimes you could be dealing with a person, and if they might leave and someone else might come. So how do you decide on that?
So again, me being kind of on the front line of the fundraising, it was the conversation. So, this is our vision for the brand and the business. This is where we want to take it. Are you on board or aren't you? Do you agree that in 3 years and in 5 years, this is what we need to do in order for us to come out as the leaders consistently? And if they're not aligned, you need to have tough decisions. And, you will know very early on if they're aligned or not. So that conversation, and it's a regular conversation, has to be very, very clearly defined. Your numbers, when you share your numbers and they say, oh, no, you need to be profitable tomorrow or next year, as a CEO that's actually counterintuitive for the business and will kill the business. So you need to make these calls. Again, it comes back to really the founder, the CEO of the organization has to say, is this what I'm trying to achieve? Is this what the business is all about? And is this investor going to open the doors, or are they going to actually limit me and close the doors?
And once they're in, and if someone, let's say, made a wrong decision in getting the wrong investor in, or not, you might just decide, where do you draw the lines as a founder with and this brings me to the other question, with your board, with your investors, as a founder, you and your advice to others as well, to other founders, where do you draw the line with your board, with your investors? Do you set certain, these are my values that I go by, and I wouldn't, that would be good. Just how do you think of that? How do you create a set of rules for that?
So look, you have corporate governance. There are certain things that are the way you operate with your board is very clear. It's your job as the CEO of the company to manage the board and keep them. At the end of the day, look, shareholders come into the business because they want to return. So, there's no, and it's your responsibility as a shareholder or as the founder of this business to ensure that they do get their returns. And you do that by ensuring the business is growing, the customer is satisfied, etc., and all the touch points and the unit economics are working. So that's your job. So you need to manage the board relationship to ensure that they are the communication is clear, communication is transparent, the goals are defined, and that you're aligned. That's part of your role as the CEO. Now, look, there will always be times when you will have debates, when you may not agree. That's fine. That's part of any business, but you need to manage it, just like you manage a peer or an employee or a boss. We have been very fortunate as Mumzworld. We've had a great set of investors. We've had fantastic shareholders. We're very fortunate that our board are not only extremely valuable to the business, but they have opened a lot of doors for us, both here and in Saudi. So we are blessed. But we took our time. We took our time in finding these investors. And, we're going to take them across the line with us and ensure that these shareholders get the returns that they have. They put their faith and trust in us, and we're going to make sure that we continue to build the business to ensure that all stakeholders get what they kind of bet for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like shareholders, like you're saying, they're trusting, putting their trust in the startup, the founders, and in the startup and the company, and it's the kind of duty of the founders to give that return back and work hard towards that. And in general, from the region, and a lot of my conversation with other founders and with VC, everyone is generally very supportive, and I think having an ecosystem that's kind of like close and small helps as well, because everyone wants to keep their reputation and so on. I think the main area where there could be some challenges for founders is, like you said, when there's difference in opinion. So it's basically, people having different opinion when you have to kind of as a founder say, this is what we're going to do and stick to it. Regardless what the damage could be, because sometimes some founders could be raising a Series A and they have one of their seed investors that they want to invest again. So you want to kind of please them, but at the same time, you need to do what's good for the business. That's mainly my question. Like, how do you, as a founder, do you need to put, a set of like rules and values and say, no matter what the risk is,
yes,
I'm going to stick to this,
So, yeah, I mean, look, you're talking probably to
just a sec.
The classic example. I am. What's the right way to put it? The communication on Mumzworld's vision, mission, and plans is very clear to employees and to our shareholders and our board, etc. And I am a forceful advocate of that. And I have many times said no to decisions that I believed were wrong for the business. I've said them to shareholders, I've said them to board members, I've said them to founders, other partners, and I'm not shy to say that. Now, having said that, as a founder of the business, I don't have all the answers. I'm very open to understanding, to learning, to looking at different perspectives, to perhaps having that paradigm shift to view things in a different light. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have to make that call, and I've had to make some tough decisions. And now to date, 9 years into Mumzworld, I look at all of the decisions where I have said, no, this is not going to happen on a board level, and they have actually been the right decision, including decisions around profitability, around scale, around infrastructure, around growth, all of that. We have, alhamdulillah, so far made some good calls for the business, and we will make mistakes, but as long as we are, having these conversations that are transparent with the board and learning from them and taking advice, and I have taken a lot of advice and I will continue to take a lot of advice, you have to balance that. But again, as founders, you cannot you cannot bend and nod your head to every move of the wave, because the wave is constantly going to change and different people are going to tell you different things, and you need to make the decision that's right for the business based on your judgment.
No one knows, your business more than you. The founders know their business the best. There's another question that someone from the audience is asking, which is actually a good question. Early on, when you're starting a company, and you've went through that cycle kind of twice as well, like you said, you need to be running around, getting everything done. And then when the business grows, it becomes more, you bring more people in, you have hundreds of people now working in. Were there any kind of like skills that you had to undo when you're kind of like after Bait went and was back at it again, small team, you need to do things in your own hands, get things up and running. How is that for you in terms of like going through that cycle twice?
Sure. So everything that I do at Mumzworld has been learned from start. Everything. I am out of my comfort zone at Mumzworld every single day, starting from 2011. So the answer to your question is the world is changing, the ecosystem is changing, e-commerce is evolving, we're operating in an undeveloped ecosystem, we're constantly learning. I'm constantly learning. So I come from a traditional marketing background where I learned how to build brick and mortar driven businesses. I had to bin that and start from scratch. Bait was a very, very, very different business also to Mumzworld. I worked in Europe and in the US in retail, FMCG businesses. Again, a complete different shift to what we do now. So the reality is we are in constant learning mode, and I am, and the team is, and the other partners are all avid, hungry learners. And I think this is one of the reasons why Mumzworld has been able to evolve very fast and be fluid, because we're constantly looking at adapting, evolving, and improving. This is not for someone who wants a 9-to-5 business as usual job. It's constantly evolving and changing. Now, my greatest kind of coming out of my comfort zone is, this whole notion of also leadership and management. So in the early days as leader and as the manager, you're very, very operationally involved in every detail. You know everything that's happening. You know who placed what where. Every detail is looked at by you. As the business grows, you cannot be there. You cannot be everywhere to everyone. And so for me, the greatest challenge has been over the years to kind of move out of the day-to-day operations and coming to the comfort where I don't know everything. Where I don't know necessarily what's happening in this department or why this happened or etc., because you simply can't be there now. I probably am more perhaps involved than most CEOs, just because of the nature of the growth of our business. And so are the other leaders in the organization. I consider us as the leaders in Mumzworld to be very actively involved, because we are truly customer driven and customer obsessed. We are the customer. So if there's a pain point with the customer, we are very much involved in the operations to quickly fix it.
Amazing. Mona, you've done an amazing job. There's a lot of people out here, we're listening to different tips and things that you've done. I would love to keep this going, but we've reached the end of our time. This has been awesome. Thank you very much for being on here. We really enjoyed this.
Thank you very much, Ray. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like this podcast and want to listen to more episodes, subscribe to the Maté Conversations podcast on one of your favorite podcast channels.